Town of Brentwood.
All right, we're going to call the meeting of the Municipal Complex Committee. It is, what is it, June 3rd
Are you typing?
at 1:30 p.m.
You want me to?
Mhm.
You want me to?
So the agenda for today really is focused on a recap of the RFQ submissions and the interviews that were conducted on Friday, the 30th. And then the board will be asked to kind of make a vote on recommendation to award a contract to the selected professional services firm. So we received a total of 5 submissions. All of them were distributed out to the committee. They were made available to the public at the PD. We shortlisted 3 firms, Turner Group, LaValle, and I'm gonna this card.
Waters. Oh.
Brensinger Architects and Warren Street Architects. The 3 firms were interviewed the afternoon of May 30th. Jim, Letty, Chief, and myself were the interview subcommittee. We were able to meet with all 3 firms in the course of the afternoon, and then we debriefed to go over our findings of that. We ultimately, as a group, coalesced around the Turner Group as our recommended selection. Generally speaking, the reasoning behind that was they seemed to, one, have the qualifications and experience that would be similar to the type of facility we're looking at. They had a good connection to delivering to smaller communities and being very locally engaged on developing both the education and outreach that's necessary to have a municipal project move forward. And they seemed, among their members present, they had made attempts to develop a rapport with both what our goals and objectives were, but also understanding that they were going to be part of developing a multi-year relationship with the town, and they want to set that standard so that we can be in a good position come next year. Not that the other 2 parties didn't do that, it just seemed that Turner seemed to separate themselves, both in the relationship, experience, and kind of approach category. So at that point, I just want to open it up to those who weren't present if anyone has any questions. We did get some handouts that we can, they were kind of usually 1 or 2 page or slides in the case of Turner. But really that was just for discussion purposes during the interview. There wasn't anything, we didn't make it a formal presentation Q&A. It was kind of more discussion based. Does anyone on the committee have any questions?
Were they notified? Or
Not yet.
are you waiting for the select board?
Yes. The next phase after it goes to the select board for recommendation tonight would be then negotiating the scope of services and fee with the selected firm. So that, if there's no other questions about the process, then I want to kind of switch gears to talk about things the committee is interested in seeing in that scope of services.
Question, and for the selectmen, you can present one company without any other price, any other bid? Is that acceptable to them, based upon looking at the qualifications?
Yes, because it was a qualifications-based selection.
Okay.
No price. They did outline their approach, and we can kind of refine it so that they can develop the scope of services, which would include a proposed agreement that would be subject to review by the town. So ideally, I think we were talking previous meetings that we would like to have them under agreement by the end of the month so that we're starting kind of the review of existing information, developing additional information for the concepts over the course of the summer so that we're in a position in the fall for those concepts to be presented for discussion among the community, and also getting the construction total project cost for the different concepts. What's in our control now as we're developing the scope of services is outlining things we want them to include, the number of concepts, we had touched on, and this was during the interviews as well, not only looking at the PD only, the hybrid PD municipal facility, or the PD with space for something, whether it's town hall or some other municipal. The other concept was getting renovation costs for this facility, existing town hall, just to know what may be looming in the town's investment in this to keep it sustained as a town hall or as something else. There was also some discussion external to the interviews related to the potential for, do we want to collect similar renovation information for the recreation building, if that were to be integrated as a concept, or also just knowing that that's an existing municipal building that also might be subject to investment in the future.
And I think it's safe to say, Eric, that the Turner Group, one of the things I liked about them, although we didn't talk specific costs, they had several, they have a lot of experience with buildings similar to what we have in mind, and we're a little bit on the lower side of some of the other two. So I personally like that as well, that they're kind of thinking on the same terms as we are, that we want to keep the cost down on this. It doesn't, so.
I would agree with that statement. They have done projects for municipalities of approximate size and scope, which I think is a valuable asset.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and specific to that, that was the towns of Sanborn, Belmont, and Conway. Two of those three have been constructed, and Conway is designed but not yet built.
And they mentioned Plymouth.
Plymouth
too,
is
there we go,
a, which was, I guess,
What were these structures? Were they
Samberton.
combined or standalone buildings?
Yeah,
or
Samberton and-
something we could look at, build upon maybe.
Here, you can get-
Samberton is a
It's in their packet.
PD. I believe that was a reno from the old town hall. Samberton's quite smaller for PD than Brentwood, but it's the renovation. Belmont was a standalone PD, which based off the layout that they provided, that seems like a really nice building. It's bigger than what we would need. I think Belmont's got some things that Brentwood doesn't. And then Conway and Plymouth, I believe. Conway was an addition to their PD to make it more feasible for them. And I think Plymouth was a town hall.
Plymouth was, well, they had, I think, a concept, and now they're going back to the drawing board with an entirely new site evaluation and redesign.
Is that the one that didn't pass town meeting?
Yeah.
Conway didn't pass.
Yep.
Plymouth was for a site, and I guess it got contaminated now, and I have
Oh,
to
yeah,
look for a
that's
new site. Eric, the Belmont one was roughly 8,000 square feet in terms of footprint. But they also had to deal with the fact that they were working on the existing PD site, so maintaining facility operations and everything while they were constructing, so that is,
I would just wonder if we're lucky enough that one of these would be pretty much a fit for what we're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, based off the footprint of Belmont, if I could pick that up and put it in this town, I'd be pretty thrilled.
yeah, so they do have examples of things that have been built and can provide for future visits by the committee and the PD staff, just to kind of see, because there's always lessons learned. If it's only been in operation for a couple of years, there's always things they can look to improve on.
Yeah, design costs are down.
Yeah.
Could work out the same price and get more
Right.
building too, so.
One of the things I will add with Turner Group is we discussed having involvement in the community. So having them set up a display at National Night Out and other town events coming up, that way the public can get to know them, because the last thing I want is for whatever group we go with to be complete strangers to the public come town meeting. I'd like, the people in town should see them, should have access to them, should be able to talk to them, ask questions. They were all for getting involved in community events like that. Seemed to be no hesitation. They seemed to be part of their, how they run their business. So that was good to hear for me.
The other thing that we had talked about that I'm guessing we as a board now need to figure out is which of the things we feel like we can kind of, not skip through, but like not go so deep into as we're talking about scope of work.
Yeah.
We have a pretty good idea of space, needs, existing spaces, stuff like that. So hopefully that will also
Transfer over.
shorten the,
Separate the wheat from the chaff.
we've already done that a little bit.
So I think what we would ask of them on the front end would be to review all the information that's been collected to date, sit with representatives from town operations and PD operations to go over those square footages and needs so that we nail down, they don't have to do it from scratch, but they can offer their insight into, we did discuss, potential for shared use space if we're looking at the hybrid facility, if we're looking at future build out of something else that we don't know what it is, but like how much footprint do we need so that they can offer their professional experience and insight into those things. But generally speaking, using the summer for defining the needs, defining the concepts they're going to be looking at so they can start putting renderings and site plans together so that they can develop their opinions of cost. So that we would have those in the middle of the fall for the education and outreach component. They do have experience with having to do that to build public support for projects, working with the municipalities they have. And some have been multi-year efforts to get through town meetings. So they are experienced with presenting at town meetings and comfortable with being able to answer questions while also supporting the public education and outreach efforts, which could take the shape of like what the chief was saying, attendance at established community events where we don't have to try and bring people together just for something new where it might be a struggle, or might be the idea of doing whether it's postcard campaigns to get the word out, newsletter articles, you name it, things that can develop. So we've put our best foot forward so that everyone has an opportunity to understand the information that the committee has collected and is reviewing, so that come town meeting in March, it's not the first time someone should be hearing about the project or the need or the amount we're seeking.
Or the status of the current building,
Yes.
which I think is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely important that they do appear at town meeting and they do a presentation, having that removed, being that removed from the town itself and being able to lay out a set of facts, I think is extremely valuable, and it will be valuable to getting our message across to the people. I would recommend putting up a website, part of the Town of Brentwood's website, where we can do links and so on and so forth, where we can have this information readily available.
Will you say it?
Hmm?
Will you say it? There already is that part of the website.
Yeah, but it's make sure that we use it and that we have someone who would be dedicated to putting things up on that website.
Sounds like Mark really wants to do that.
No, so I was more looking at you.
Yep, I'm already doing it.
Okay,
It's already there.
awesome.
Comment on the website. I was looking at going to through the page to get to the website. There's a lot of information there, but none of it's dated, none of it's signed. So you have no idea what came first. So I think that anything that goes up there should be dated and someone's name should be on it besides who's in the, address or whatever. But there's like the Westing Group, whatever it was, there was a number of presentations there, but they're not dated. You have no idea if it's current or old, and there's no way to look at it.
So as of right now, that's what
And-
we have. That is the most current thing. I think as we work with Turner Group, we can maybe replace some of these things with materials we get from them.
But I think anything that goes up there should have the date on it and who put it up there, so I know where it's.
I
No.
put everything up there.
And, I mean, just to go on the webpage, the town page is so far out of date too, just with who's on committees and everything else in town.
I don't know if you've done it, but you should also put like a virtual tour of the station.
Oh, I plan to.
Down there.
Yeah.
And,
I'm gonna do whole videos. I have plenty of
We have
photos of our
clips and-
toilets
Yeah.
overflowing and mice and cockroaches and
I mean, don't stage it or anything, but just
Yeah.
walk through and I don't think you're gonna get much argument. Needed.
there's no staging downstairs. What you see is what you get.
There's probably somebody out there doesn't have a clue that
Yeah.
what you have.
You bring up a very important point that I think is worth noting, is the town website. There, we don't have a webmaster. There's nobody who's really in charge of it in the scope, in its overall scope.
Yeah,
And that
each
that can be,
department is supposed to be responsible for its own section.
well, and that's the issue, is that
Mhm.
I'm not a webmaster. I am, you know, like, I try to do the best that I can, but
Well, I'm just bringing
It's
up.
ju-
I'm
no,
not
you-
either, and
you
I
have
finally
a-
found stuff and I didn't know if it was current or.
no,
or-
it's valid. What you're saying
you
is
wanna update
absolutely
it?
valid.
I'm lucky to find it, let alone try to update
Yep.
it.
Right. See,
I just got my email working after a month, so,
no, your concern is valid, and I'm just trying to convey
right. no,
why it can be challenging, is that,
I understand completely after what I just went through with my stuff, plus just generally looking at it, but when I found something, I was looking to see what's the latest information, and you can't really tell. And all it would take is either even the header or just on each document should be like, Turner put a date on their pages. I mean, that ought to be a requirement for stuff going up, so you know what the status of things are.
Yeah, and I don't think we've gotten much current stuff now. I think is going to be the time where we start getting those current documents to, as Letty said, replace what's been placed on there.
Well,
So now
either
we'll have-
replace or add to it.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be historical,
Right.
it shouldn't disappear, but.
Right.
No, I think that's all good feedback, because I think we're gonna use this summer on information development, while we know people are harder to get a hold of. So have the engineering and architecture team working this summer, so that we have information to discuss in a broader group when we get into the fall, when people are kind of re-engaged. So I guess what we need to do is I need a motion first, is there any more discussion on the selection or recommendation, sorry? No? All right, so I would need a motion to recommend to the select board that we move ahead with notice of award to the Turner Group. I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor of recommending award to the Turner Group? Say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? No. Jim, would you be willing to make that recommendation tonight at tonight's meeting?
I can.
Then the chief will, after the select board gets their chance, then tomorrow would be, chief, if you can notify
Yep.
Turner, and then we will have to notify the other two firms of. All right, so I guess that comes back to just close the loop on scope of services. I don't have their package right here in front of me, but generally speaking, they kind of, I don't think they laid it explicitly out. But we have needs assessment and kind of records review, which is kind of like set up the existing condition and for them to confirm which options we want them to look at. As it sits right now, the expectation is they'd use the available information and then refine it and provide feedback so we don't have to redo the whole needs assessment. We feel like we have a pretty good PD square footage, general needs, same thing with the municipal offices. But what we haven't done is given them a chance to look at it, comment, and then confirm that those are both now still valid, because those were developed, generally speaking, without a lot of committee feedback.
The space you're looking at, is that one that was done previously?
And then idea of the types of rooms and sizes, not the floor plan.
But there is not that's the only thing you have for scope. There's nothing that the committee put together that said, I need 6 rooms, I need this, I need that.
The whole committee has not, no, but some of us have worked after we saw that initial floor plan to be like, nope, we can do better than that.
It's a
Well,
good,
I'm saying is I looked at that one floor plan. That thing was interesting, I guess, to say the least.
so we would put them in charge of looking at the information that came up with not necessarily the layout, but there are spaces, whether it's office, administrative, booking,
Well,
salad port, they would look at those and then be like, all right, are these square footages right? And then the next step would be they would start developing a floor plan.
Well, my question, I guess, really is how many offices do we want? Are we gonna let them determine? Or
No, we're,
No,
Who's
it'll
gonna
be- yeah, it'll
determine,
be our-
these are the that's what I'm looking.
yeah,
We
they,
need-
that
And I
feedback
haven't
was,
seen that, is what maybe it's here someplace and I didn't find it. But,
it is in the Weston and Sampson report. However,
yeah, that was.
that needs to be revisited just to confirm that those things are
well,
what is wants and needs and
Okay.
also sizes.
I think what you're
That's the
saying,
starting
Eric,
point.
which is accurate, is that we were never given a chance to respond to those suggestions. So
Because
maybe make
that
some-
Weston one was huge.
Yes.
That's the one with, if I remember here, it's got the huge meeting room with a full kitchen plus other rooms and stuff, if that's what we want.
Multiple meeting rooms.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it just trying to make sure the scope is what we want and save them time to say, hey, this is what we need as a town versus, what have we missed? Let's
Yeah.
face it that way, it's easier to have them come back and say, you gotta have this, and this. In my view, then you're gonna cut this out, because I don't think anybody's gonna cut anything out if they,
Yeah, I know.
from their standpoint.
Yeah, it was probably before you.
I'm just,
Join the
I'm
committee,
just
yeah.
concerned you're gonna get what you want and
Yep.
not get a lot that you don't need, and this is
Yeah.
the right thing.
There was a lot of fluff in that one, a lot of just
I'm
unneeded.
glad you used those words.
Yeah.
I avoided it.
No, it's fine. I call a spade a spade. You know.
We never went back and
Yeah.
Right, and that's my concern, is give this to some, and is this really what we want, or what do we want, so we don't cycle them?
Yeah.
No, I wish that report would just disappear.
It would be
I-
better if that had.
I mean,
It'd be better if
it
it never existed.
Then that will seem dishonest.
No,
Oh,
you get my
I'm saying
point. I
in
say
the-
it,
It biases the opinion of,
It-
so,
Yeah.
so Eric, to your point though, that is give them a jumping off point where both current PD staff, current municipal staff can weigh in on the wants and needs and for their individual sandboxes. And then there will be an option where we have the joint facility where then we would be looking at what efficiencies can you get from shared use space, which Letty has already done a bunch of legwork on where some of that could come from.
I also drew up a PD.
So, so we're gonna end up with, what we'll end up with, prior to getting them to the costing standpoint, is a PD floor plan, a PD municipal complex floor plan, and then most likely a PD with site space for some future building.
No, I understand, I just wanna make sure that we have what we want in a list for them to start.
Yep, we have,
Not have, I'll use your word again, nicely fluffed stuff that we're not gonna want in there, and they're part of their original scope. So just making sure the scope is well defined for what they want, just not saying design a police department.
Yep.
I think
19, 20 people, whatever it's gonna be. And
we want them to take into account future growth in staff. So it is gonna be a space that is a PD for the next 20 years, not the
which is gonna
PD for
be, I
today.
think we discussed before, that was gonna be, what, a 19 people?
right, but you don't need space for all 19 people right away.
No, but I'm saying for space, that's what
Yep.
you're looking.
We have to,
for.
they are looking forward, so we're not getting the PD we needed 3 years ago, just by trimming everything down. There is room for growth.
The only thing, by trimming, only thing I'm looking for is that we have the room for growth, and we don't have a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily need, or space that we don't need, but have the space that we do need.
Yep.
Point taken.
No, that's definitely, I think, coming out of that prior study, that was an element that wasn't afforded the committee. We will start from that place, and then, so there will be needs assessment to confirm wants, needs, and that's kind of like agnostic to what it goes inside of. And then we will be having the concepts related to the PD-only facility, a joint facility, and then the hybrid, which is a PD with either interior room for build-out for something future or site space for some future municipal building.
And probably also then layout of the PD
Yep.
with that in mind.
Yes. So those are the three core things we laid out in the RFQ. The other thing that we did mention in the RFQ was an assessment of this building to understand its future renovation costs, either to sustain municipal operations, or if this was to be a renovated facility once the PD's
By
out.
renovating, what are you looking at in the way of moving office spaces around? I mean,
Repurposing of the basement, HVAC, electrical upgrades, just general building maintenance in terms of age. useful
Basically,
life.
if we're building a police department only, and the intent is to keep town offices here, what would need to be done to keep them here?
okay, because there is, as I understand it, there's upgrades you can do without having to get into a complete code compliance portion.
True.
It
But it
depends on how much we change.
Exactly.
So,
And getting into a code compliance update would be huge dollars.
yes.
So what we would be asking of them is to look at this as a standalone renovation and rehabilitation project to compare against the cost of the brand-new joint facility, so that you can see that if it's, for example, $2 to build the brand-new one, but it's $1.50 to renovate this space, would you rather go new than have to spend 3/4 of that money on?
No, I don't disagree with that.
So it's just, we don't have that information.
Just the area you're going to, how you're gonna update it. It can be done many ways. If you're moving interior partitions is one thing. If you're bringing it up to code, the costs go skyrocketing. It'll probably become,
I mean, I think one of the things, if the intent is to use the basement as office space, we're gonna have to put in a staircase and an elevator. So that's probably not cheap.
Well, part of that,
will you have to build an elevator if you're having office space? The building meets the requirements now. Not having an elevator be grandfathered unless you go too far into.
Well, but if there are people working here that need to get downstairs, currently you have to go outside the building and
Right.
walk around. I don't think that would be a fair expectation for town employees.
That may be true, but it's not a code requirement. That's a nice work
Well,
environment.
the basement is not ADA compliant, and we are required to be ADA compliant. if
Not-
it's a
well,
public building, if it's a public.
It depends on what you want to do. If you want to keep it just storage, then there's a way around that.
Yeah, it just comes down to how much. I think what
Correct,
we,
yeah.
what we'd
We'll look at
ideally
everything.
look for is just looking at this building now, what is its physical condition and what does it need? And then if you start adding those things in, how much money are we looking
Right.
at 5-10 years down the road? Because
Mm.
making a decision next March, that is a number we should make sure everyone understands, because that would be the next project, whether we build a new one or not. Like, this building has some deficiencies that are not just stuck in the basement.
part of that rehab would be creating a space where we can have public meetings. And this space that we're sitting in right now does not really meet the needs of the townspeople of Brentwood to hold a public meeting in. If you have anything of any contention, people physically can't fit in this room with the board. This table, the way it's set up as far as a board meeting, really is not a good setup.
I
So
mean, it's-
part of that
It's good given the shape of the room, right? I know what their
Hey, we're
goal
doing the
was.
best we can with what we got. I mean, and I'm not knocking it. We're doing what we need to do and to be compliant with public hearings. We're doing what we need to do. But this space, with the growth of Brentwood, really doesn't meet its needs anymore.
I mean, my concern is, as I said way back, is just making sure that we keep the scope and the price as such, so we get a police station. And that's,
Yeah, I mean,
so
all
I
of
may
that,
be beating on things repeatedly, but that's.
all of
that's
that's
my-
gonna be something that you're gonna get to see and the public's gonna get to see as we go through this whole process, because I'm assuming this is all gonna be very public process.
That's our goal.
That's the
That's,
goal,
that's
yeah.
the goal.
Because
Yeah.
the comments I've heard along the way, and I'm sure other people have heard the fact that you got a town hall and it seems to be doing pretty well. You got a police department that's doing well, but that doesn't have good space, so.
Yeah.
I'd hate to see it pushed out.
Well, I think the major thing that this committee is trying to do is just get all the information possible to
Right.
the public. So
And,
that way,
and let them make a decision.
Yeah.
I agree. with
whether
you.
we, stick to a standalone PD and just say, hey, FYI, in a few years, here's the deficiencies of the town hall, it might come up for discussion. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
But I think we
we
should
just-
be prepared for
yeah,
that, but I
preparing.
wouldn't want them to say, we're gonna build this right now. People say, well, you got a nice town hall, so.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
that'll be part of, I mean, we are we need to provide the education for the town
Right.
people.
Yeah.
And frankly, people don't know what they don't know, and that's our
And-
job.
But they do know that they don't want to spend a lot of money.
Correct. You know, if the
So
value
that-
is
I
in
mean,
Well,
building
that's
bulk.
what we're fighting.
But in response to that, look what happened with the fire department. We could have built a new PD attached to the fire department, but they didn't want to spend the money.
No, but be careful bringing that up, because that was supposed to have space to put a PD on the end.
It did in the first renovation, but after the fourth try, when they kept cutting things to get it
They cut
passed,
it down, but the space was still supposed to be
it
there.
was not.
That's just a dead horse, and I don't think it's gonna be
We're
productive.
spinning our wheels here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
That's
want
fine,
to
just-
just get back to
Focus.
like, is there any other things we want to bake into their scope? Because they're if we can have them look at the 3 core concepts, look at this facility to get the renovation cost, that was what we had kind of identified. Is there anything else we want? Otherwise, it's kind of getting down to,
Handouts, like some
they need a public
materials-
education and
materials that we can
outreach
share.
tasks.
Yep.
Have
Maybe
we-
even a deadline for those,
Yeah.
so we can just start hammering on them starting in November.
Yeah, they mentioned
And I
surveys.
think your comment before about getting stuff out in newsletters is very good. Most people get that, they're aware of it. At least they know something's going on, because the last thing anybody heard was the building that the price came out on, and everybody was in shock on that.
Right.
And just trying to say, let people know this is being looked at again, this is what we're doing. Try to cushion them for, it's coming.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything else they want to see this consultant look at? That hasn't already been discussed.
I mean, we're gonna have to do at least a couple public info sessions, right, with them?
Yeah, I think my thought would be that they probably have dedicated meetings in the summer with the PD staff and town hall staff to kind of confirm project scope, needs, and things like that. Monthly at a minimum, if not bi-weekly, quick progress meetings with you and some other member of the committee, most likely myself, just to know where they're at, where they have information needs from us, where they have things that are in play. Having an initial public outreach event, which, when's night out, is August?
Yeah, first Tuesday, August, I think.
Going back to other entities that they need to be involved in, they should probably be involved with DOT and the state after the traffic study that was done up in that area of 125, because this is going to impact traffic turning in and out of that road.
They had mentioned that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It all comes down to emergency egress as the second in and out just for PD explicit versus that grand vision of the roundabout.
Yeah, and like,
We
you know,
have
the roundabout aspect, Smith Road and all that stuff, so.
We would want them to like, ultimately, they'll look at all these, they'll prepare the concept, so those are plans, renderings, kind of cost estimates, technical memo or report that lays out everything, what they did, their findings, advantages, challenges to each of the concepts, and then ultimately, they will be agnostic to a recommendation, but they'll give us all the information so that this board can decide on what is the best recommendation or recommendations to present as future warrant articles, which obviously would be, we'd take into account public feedback from all the events too. If it ends up being a PD only and that's the one that we can get all the buy-in we need, then so be it. If it's something bigger than that, and we'll find out hopefully in the fall, so we're not going to town meeting with 4 options, 4 votes.
Maybe we can even see if they can do a survey.
Yeah.
Their scope includes all the site work.
Right now, this is all just conceptual.
No, I mean, that's part of their conceptual.
Yeah, they'd have to look and kind of figure out what do you have to think about, but we're not necessarily gonna be going out and digging test bits. So
Which
the
I think
way,
they already did.
Yeah, I think we do have.
we've done some of that, I'm sure they're gonna have to do more. Turner Group, similar to Warren Street, both were, had a favorable opinion of the town pursuing construction management at risk, which would mean we'd be hiring a construction manager in the future. So the costs as presented at town meeting would be for both hard construction costs plus soft design permitting. So that you'd start a design and permitting process, then hire a construction manager who then owns the project soup to nuts, and then the architect supporting us through the
And
paid
the
construction.
important part of that is that it would be a guaranteed maximum number that they could not go over unless major change orders that come from us. with
So we
approval.
don't have to do quite as much front-end work to have construction documents. It's more like you're going in with preliminary designs and things that have to get answered, and you're working with the construction manager to, fine-tune septic, stormwater management, all the things that are more bigger site concerns, as well as refining the building design. So that was
Did
kind of,
Turner give a price for this Belmont building?
I believe it's in their
Yeah.
qualifications.
3.5.
Yeah,
Three
they,
point-
it was budgeted at 3.5, they came in under budget.
Okay.
The current New England index for about 4 years is, he probably would put about 20%. Give or take.
But we're not talking numbers yet.
Nope.
So those are things where they will be developing, and I believe Turner had their own independent estimator.
They
This is
did.
Also based in New Hampshire, so they would be getting independent estimates
Okay,
for the
just, yeah, that was
concept.
just an idea for me what they were looking at.
And they had their own construction management company that they partner with, right?
One of those two, they got
BPS.
brought
BPS,
into the
yeah.
project by a construction manager to act as the town's.
Yeah, Bonnet,
Design.
Page and Stone is the one that they most often work with. Pretty well known. And then the only other one was electrical engineering. Everything else
They
was
had an
in-house.
electrical side.
Yeah.
Everything else was in-house.
But we did touch on the need for energy and efficiency, so that gets into insulation, everything like that, the types of heating systems, thinking long-term life cycle costs and things that this building currently doesn't have and the PD definitely doesn't have.
I mean,
So that-
something we're gonna have to also look into. What are the solar panels that the firehouse do now? Do they do this building?
Yeah,
They cover everything
They
but the
cover-
Swayze.
kind of.
So that might be something else we look into to make sure that.
The roof would, International Building Code, at least in where I've done work, is everything has to be solar ready. So if it's
They'll
feasible
be
on
using the
site.
existing solar panels that the towns are using.
I think we owe one more payment.
No,
We
Pay it out.
I mean, a good
So to make sure
design
we can hook up to them or whatever. or-
idea
No,
would
no,
be,
no.
you might know,
I don't know how
the
that
Oyster River Middle School in Durham, their carport is covered with
Exactly,
solar
you can-
panels.
You can do it on accessories.
So-
Your energy just never comes from the solar panels. Those solar panels are hooked directly to the grid. And then you just,
We're just
you don't,
opposite.
it gets offset off your electric bill.
But
If
if
you-
there are panels on site, then it would go directly to the building
Yes,
first.
exactly.
Just like that one goes directly to fire first.
So it comes off the meter of that particular
So
building.
I think at a minimum, it would be the building would be solar capable.
Yeah,
And then
okay.
whether you do it at the time, or you do it later, or you do it as part of the covered parking for all the cruisers and things, you can do it on a pertinent structure.
It was a good setup at Oyster.
They
Frank
did, I
kids
mean,
go
they
up
put,
there and if they park the
whether
school
it's
buses
your
in
thing or not,
snowstorms.
it's also hooked to EV chargers, so kind of
There
a
used to be
win-win.
grants for that. Yep. No,
But I
just
mean, the
'cause we're-
payback is a lot better now than it was 5 years ago, so, I mean, when the town invested in those, I mean, now they would be getting way more efficient panels at cheaper per kilowatt. So I think those are the kind of efficiencies things that are baked into the building code already, but then they can obviously make sure that it's looking forward for life cycle costs, because I'm sure we'll get questions about how much is the new building gonna cost us to operate and maintain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because we know what we're spending downstairs just to try and make it somewhat habitable.
Right.
I think being able to present carrying costs for any of them is gonna be important. I don't think it's gonna probably vary all that much from building to building, but having a number,
Yes.
just to demonstrate that we're thinking about it.
Yeah. Which I know was brought up last time
Mhm.
in our meeting.
Yes. I do have a hard stop I gotta leave.
In 5 minutes.
So, I mean, I guess we're keeping them on scope with just the 4 primary, which would be PD only, a joint facility, and a PD with space, whether it be internal or external for some future or municipal, and then just having an assessment of this building to find out what its potential renovation.
Did you mention assessing the rec center as well?
No, that was just a hypothetical. If we want to, we can include it.
I did ask after the last meeting for a commercial assessment of this building. I don't know if that's happened yet. I saw that it's on.
Versus
for tonight.
what was the appraisal? Was like just
Getting an updated one, because the one that we had reference used in the past was old, a couple years old now, so just,
That's on your agenda.
I know. So I'm hoping
so
that
fresh appraisal for this.
I'm hoping that means we have a number. Well, best value. Value. Value.
So unfortunately, can you
Just.
Justin?
But we can keep talking about it.
Next meeting, assuming to and do, I guess,